Now, welcome to Biztech's Investor Conversation Show. The focus is on the Southeast Asian angel investment ecosystem today and how it's evolved over the years. Now, to give us some great insights to this, we have Ramesh Raghavan, who's the chairman of BANSEA, which is based in Singapore. It was established in 2001 as the leading angel investment network promoting the development of angel investment community in Southeast Asia. It claims to be Asia's oldest angel investment network. Now, welcome to the show, Ramesh.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Now, Ramesh, could you start by kind of giving us an overview of BANSEA and your history?
Yeah, I mean, angel investment as an idea started off only in the early part of the dot-com boom in the early 2000s. In general, largely an idea which originated in the West. And it came about in Singapore because a bunch of professors, I don't know if you've heard of the professor in the US, Professor Wong Po Kam, who basically started the BANSEA Angel Network way back in 2000. It's developed over the years. And but angel investment as a significant investment asset class really took off post the global financial crisis, at least in Asia. All right. And if you look at what happened post the global financial crisis is that there was a massive deceleration in job growth among large companies. You no longer had big companies, financial services or non-financial services hiring hundreds and hundreds of graduates for the part of their job growth program. So governments realized that we need to move away from the traditional job prospects story to a more entrepreneurship oriented story. And when you talk about entrepreneurship, you need people who want to provide some capital to see that ideas grow, build, scale, and you can provide more jobs through that process rather than through the original process. For example, I can give you an example. When I joined Morgan Stanley way back in the mid 90s, there used to be busloads of people who were hired. And post the financial crisis, it's no longer busloads. It's more like carloads of people, right? I mean, it's like a minivan or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think entrepreneurship developed, part of the fillip to entrepreneurship happened because of the GFC and also because technology, especially mobile technology, took root substantially post 2000s. And that changed the game. The internet effectively fueled the entrepreneurship story across the world, right? So from BANSEA perspective, we have been active in Singapore and the ecosystem for a long period of time. Our objective is very simple. Our objective is to help new angels become comfortable with the angel investing process. Be network. I mean, ours is a network where people from different professions come and join. You could be an entrepreneur, you could be a seasoned corporate executive, you could be a freelance guy, but we have people from all kinds of disciplines who come together and are passionately involved in growing the entrepreneurship ecosystem by providing startup capitals angels. And we also provide education and training to the angels in terms of how to look at term sheets. What are the things to look at? Due diligence needs to be done when you look at a new startup. So we provide the whole spectrum of networking, opportunities for startups to pitch and raise capital through angels, and provide an opportunity to train angels in this ecosystem so that they can be the potential developers and providers of capital and mentorship to new entrepreneurs starting out of this world. So it's a threefold: entrepreneurship, capital, networking, and effectively providing a mentorship platform for people to participate. Startups are open. We have regular startup pitching events every month. We get about 30 or 40 requests. The board then decides which 10 startups which needs to present. Then they will come and present, and then different individuals can choose to form a syndicate, or they can go on their own, or they can also be part of our BANSEA has got two funds. called BANSEA Fund 1 and BANSEA Fund 2, where it's basically made up of capital from existing members, and they are all voluntary, right? We have a volunteer of members who run the investment committee and the investment board, and they can be part of, they can present to them as well. And effectively, there are a number of ways which entrepreneurs or startups can raise capital. A is through our angels as individuals, or angels can form syndicates among themselves, or 3 is via our funds, which are basically capital provided by angels, but which is run by a group of volunteers who are angels themselves.
Okay, now, how you're based in Singapore, but your remit is basically an ASEAN remit.
Yes, ASEAN. I mean, we have a worldwide remit. It's not necessary either, but we generally tend to focus on companies which are incorporated in Singapore.
Okay.
The operating business can be anywhere in the world. For example, one of our funds is invested in a company which is like the Grab of French-speaking Africa.
Okay.
But the operating, the holding companies in Singapore. We just like the business model there. So, but most of the investors generally tend to flock towards companies which are closer to home rather than, you know, in different parts of the world, right? I mean, the angels, if you look at Silicon Valley, it's basically, if you want to get a Silicon Valley investment, traditionally the methodology has been, you have to be 15 kilometers within the VC community.
Yeah, within Sand Hill Road.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
So, in a way, in Singapore, it's our members follow similar model, but it's just that the holding companies and the cap table is situated in Singapore, but operating business can be in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, wherever you call it, right? But so it's not a it's more out of the fact that Singapore is a great place for establishing companies because of the clean exit and entry policies for many of the investors who want to get involved.
So Ramesh, now, because Singapore is such a cosmopolitan place, what is the typical profile of an angel investor? Who are your members or prospective members?
Look, you know, we follow this thing called primary consideration. A is the member should be an accredited investor, which the definition of accredited investor may be, you know, you need to have a net worth of Singapore $2 million or, you know, minimum annual income of 200 grand or something. So we follow that philosophy. A, that is one. B is, so only accredited investors can be part of our network first.
Okay.
B is that our membership is by invitation. Don't actively go and, we actively go and look for members, but we also do due diligence in terms of, you know, are these members, have they spent some significant time in the industry? Are they bringing in some significant skill sets in terms of having worked in e-commerce or financial services? So our age profile of our members is 40 and above in generally. Okay. And people from all kinds of industries are there, entrepreneurs are there, VCs are there as well, you know, those who run venture capital firms as well. So there is no typical profile, but the profile is somebody who is keen on starting off as angel, and there could be people who want to start off as angel investor. There are people who are experienced angels, and we help the process of integrating the thought process of getting the experienced angels help out the newbie angels, right? And so that they can go on and bring in more angels potentially in the future, right? So our objective is our membership is very diverse. There are a lot of international people. We also have a challenge in terms that because our membership is very diverse, a lot of people are transitory, right? They come to Singapore, they're there for 3 years.
That's the nature of Singapore. Yeah.
That's the nature of Singapore, right? So those are the challenges, but we tend to keep in touch with them wherever they go. You know, hopefully they will continue to remain member, or they are ambassadors in different geographies. You could go back to France or Germany, and you could be an ambassador saying, hey, you know, this is a great network in Singapore, and they will and we bring a lot of deal flow from them in the sense that they'll say, okay, this is an interesting deal.
So the transitory nature has turned out to be a big advantage for you.
It is an advantage and a disadvantage as well, because those who are very contributing a lot to the network while they were in Singapore no longer can contribute in the same way they used to, being on Singapore, but it helps in the sense that they pass on the good word, and we get a lot of deal flow from different geographies as well. So there are good things and bad things. So there is no clear cut, there is no negative element because they are effectively ambassadors to the system.
Okay, so Ramesh, now given your membership profile today, what is the typical ticket size industry that they look to invest in, timelines, and so forth, in terms of strategy as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's the angels are, there is no typical angel, unfortunately. The definition of typical angel is really not there. But on an average, the ticket size is between 20 to 25,000 US
Okay.
Per person. The angels are also in some ways dependent on how the mood or the wind blows in the startup ecosystem, right? In the early 2010s, it was all ICT related, anything to do with e-commerce related stuff in the first 2010 to 2013, 14 period. Then it moves into more things like fintech, 2015 to 2018 and 19. Now we're seeing a lot of fintech.
Yeah.
Then 2016 to 2000, we also saw a lot of beginnings of deep tech related stuff, things with robotics, Internet of Things. And over the last few years, there's a lot more activity in the blockchain space, right? Okay. And so there is no typical, profile, because each individual. The problem with the angel ecosystem, or you say the angel ecosystem, is defined by your background. For example, my background is financial services.
Yeah.
So in general, I will have a bias at looking at things in fintech in general.
Yeah.
There is
that's a natural thing. You
that's
basically
a natural thing.
Focus on what your domain is and what you're comfortable in, and that's the value proposition that you bring to the table.
Absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that you can't explore out of your comfort zone. There are people who are happy to explore out of that comfort zone. I look at e-commerce, I look at blockchain, I look at Internet of Things. And what our objective is to see to it that people with different domain experiences there, and how we can bring them together, so that if you can share the knowledge. If I get a deal in e-commerce, I would rather go to a guy who understands e-commerce better and figure out if there's a potential opportunity or not. So our objective is to get the network merge or mingle in such a way that people can share their knowledge for the benefit of investment purposes, despite the fact that you may not be having your domain expertise in a particular startup that you're looking at. Right? So we are trying to bring together people with different expertise to contribute to the ecosystem in the investment process.
Now, Ramesh, I've got to ask you this because Singapore, the Singapore government has done such a great job in building a vibrant tech ecosystem really very quickly. I mean, of course, they initially started out, if you look historically, 1999 was like the watershed where they started to deploy funds in the venture capital industry, but basically partnering with Silicon Valley. But then fast forward now 22 years, they are literally at the epicenter of ASEAN in terms of this space. What do you think they've done right?
I think the greatest thing Singapore has done is they have identified areas which will benefit Singapore being a small nation, and how they can be in the forefront of this process of aiding entrepreneurship in general. I think Singapore figured out that for growth for them has to be built on technology and to be the front end of technology. I mean, if there is any if you ask anybody in the world, which you think are the smart cities in the world, they'll say Singapore.
Yep.
It's definitely one of them, right? I think the government has done a phenomenal job of identifying pockets of industry where Singapore has strengths, and they can also use strengths from abroad to bring them together and create an ecosystem where they can be part of the future. And that boils down to a lot of research work, both done with the local communities, as well as the fact that they are much more open and flexible to new ideas. They're willing to change and pivot as things change. So I think flexibility and not being stuck with old ideas is something which the Singapore government has done very well.
Now, Ramesh, until a couple of years ago, there were no Silicon Valley in VCs or what hanging out in ASEAN. Now it's literally in the recent 2 or 3 years, it's been a flood. What do you
Sure.
think is attracting everyone to ASEAN now? What's attractive about ASEAN and ASEAN startups?
I think there are two parts to it, right? I think the first part is ASEAN is generally what I call in the early stages of using technology to make lives easier, right? You have a substantial population, you have 650 million people here with significant mobile penetration. And the opportunity set is very large compared to what is already there in the US. The US has moved into more what you call sophisticated startup profile, right? Whereas in ASEAN, we are still at the maturing stage of what I call frugal innovation. Frugal innovation in the sense of using technology to solve simple problems like delivery, e-commerce, the typical
Buka
stuff.
Lepa is a classic example.
Exactly, right. So it provides jobs.
Yeah.
There's enough of a population base to take care of the metrics of revenues and addressable market. And C is that ASEAN as a general community is a very hardworking community. Whether it's Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, whatever it is, the people are much more open to work hard, and the economics of the wages makes the model potentially competitive. The wages are much cheaper than where it is.
So you have wage arbitrage even within ASEAN itself.
Is very high. For example, some of the best software engineers now you can find in Vietnam. Vietnam is a fantastic place to find software engineers. So I think first fact is that on the B2C space, ASEAN is emerging as a potentially viable opportunity, right? Whereas B2B space, it's got a long way to go. It's not there yet. But ASEAN, the real opportunity in ASEAN over the next 4 to 5 years is in B2C space. Once we get out of the get into the mature profile of B2C by 2025, we'll get to the B2B space, which is where we'll come more into enterprise software, IoT, robotics, that kind of stuff. But Singapore is actually what I call a hybrid Silicon Valley and ASEAN space, where you can find all kinds of ideas floating around, but it's moving away more to more value-added stuff, right? You have clean energy, climate change related startups, sustainability startups.
Yeah,
right?
So like agri-tech, vertical farm.
Agri-tech, exactly. So in additive manufacturing, you got IoT, you got smart city related projects. So Singapore is moving up the value chain, whereas Singapore is used as a base by the startups which have operating businesses in ASEAN to be part of the lower end of the value chain, which is e-commerce, delivery, that kind of stuff. But Singapore is slowly moving up into the what I call AI ML driven value chain space.
Okay, and obviously that's also a function of the fact that from an income perspective and from a development perspective, they are far ahead of its ASEAN peers, Malaysia,
Correct.
Indonesia, even Malaysia and Indonesia and stuff like that.
Correct.
Now, Ramesh, I want to zoom on you personally as an investor. So to give the audience a perspective of, now we've talked about macro issues and the opportunities and stuff like that, the organization. Now you personally, you've been an investor for a number of years. Tell us typically what you look for and what you look for in investing in an entrepreneur and a company.
Yeah, very typically I look at how it's over a period of number of interactions with the entrepreneur. I'll figure out whether he's really passionate about it. Because at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is a very hard journey. It's not for everyone.
Yes.
It's hard, and that's perfectly okay. Some people are very good at entrepreneurship. Some people are very good at managing a corporate life. Perfectly okay. But for entrepreneurs, I never look at a single founder. I look at the founder, it's a bunch of founders. When I say bunch, I mean not more than 3. Because it's
So
very
you have
difficult.
a bias against single founders because there is something that many people do have.
Yes, that's right. I do have a bias against single founders, but that doesn't mean that it can change in the sense that if, as an investor, I educate the founder to say it is a hard journey. Your idea is great. I think I like your value proposition, but it would make sense that you get another founder. Sometimes some founders have done that. They come in as single founders and they found a co-founder to handle the duties, and it becomes a more investable business. So
Okay.
as you're right, I don't look favorably on single founders. I prefer more than a single founder because the journey is very hard. And B is when I question entrepreneurs, I like to figure out how they react to my questions because most of the time I am unaware of the intricacies of their business model or the domain they are, right? So I may ask a lot of stupid questions,
Okay.
and I want the entrepreneur not to get annoyed.
Okay.
If he's
Okay.
annoyed that he's answering stupid questions, then I'm not interested. So the
Okay.
ability of the entrepreneur to effectively explain his business, his domain, his business model in very simple terms is very important. I, as an investor, have the opportunity to ask stupid questions because I am putting in the capital.
Exactly. Because there's an adage that, and I learned this a long time ago. He who holds the goal makes the rules.
Exactly. And it is, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs who will get annoyed and who will get very defensive if you ask questions which they don't have the answer to. It's perfectly okay not to have an answer. And as an entrepreneur, you don't have an answer to 99% of the things, right?
Yeah.
But you should be humble enough to admit that I don't know the answer right now, but I'll find out an answer or we'll figure out a way as we go along. That's an okay answer, right? So for me, it's important that the entrepreneur is humble and he understands that, you know, the journey is will have number of pivots, number of turns, and stops. And as long as you don't get annoyed, I mean, I prefer entrepreneurs who will say that, hey, I think this is the answer, but I may be absolutely wrong, but I need your help with this. And I'm okay to be flexible and move on if I find the right answer. So perfectly okay. So I think the ability for entrepreneurs to take annoying, stupid questions is also important part of the thing. And C obviously is they should build a good team, and at the end of the day your interactions will tell you, especially the early stage, whether there's a probability of success or not, whether it's 20%, 50%, 60%. We don't know the answer, right? I mean, but you get a feel of it, and sometimes it's all about chemistry. I believe that investing is about three things: physics, chemistry, and math. The math part is the economics of the model.
Yeah.
The physics part is what you're using, the technology, what the underlying domain, what is the problem that you're solving, and how you're solving. The chemistry part of it is I may like you, you may not like me.
Yes.
And you may like me, I may not like you. So you may have the greatest idea, but if I don't like you, there is no capital that is coming in, right? And I may have all the money, but the entrepreneur may not like me. So I don't want the capital from him.
Yes. But
Right.
Ramesh,
So
can
it
I
works
ask
both
you
ways.
this dating process for
Yes.
you, and it obviously then varies with investor to investor. How long does this normally take?
Well, it's very difficult to say. Sometimes it can be as long as 3 months. I mean, I've invested in a company where it took me from a year to get invested in, simply because I was not convinced and he was not convinced. And at some point of time, things moved, and we got involved. It can be as little as 1 month, and it could be as long as 1 year.
Okay. What are some of the mistakes that you've made in the past, the investor, that you have learned from and you want to share with our audience?
Yeah. I think first is do not invest in a company where there are too many co-founders. I made an investment some time back where I invested where there are nearly 6 co-founders, and nobody was the chief there. All right. And so I think anything more than 3 is not viable when you're starting off a business, because somebody needs to take charge of the business as a CEO, right? The second thing is invest in businesses with at least some revenue traction. When I say some revenue traction, I mean you should have at least 3 to 4 months or 6 months of some revenue, which says that there is some market product fit, something there where if you can tweak, you can do better. So it's, I've invested in a company with a PowerPoint presentation, and just because I like the idea, it's fantastic, it looked great, but despite the best CV of the entrepreneur, he couldn't execute for a number of reasons. But because I just went on the PowerPoint presentation. So I think at the early stage, it's mostly about how you assess the entrepreneur, whether he's there for the long run, and B is you need to see some kind of revenue traction, at least for 3 to 6 months, to say there's something there,
Okay.
you know, for a potential opportunity in the long run to happen. Because otherwise, angel investing, as you know, it's there's a joke which floats around. I'm sure you're aware of it. The fastest way to become a millionaire is to be a billionaire and start off.
Yes.
Right? And for I would suggest for a lot of new angels is to not be hurrying to invest aggressively in the early phase of their angel investing process. They should typically try to build, ideally, the S&P 500 of angel investments.
Okay. And how do you do that?
So you can start off with $5,000. You can start off with $10,000. You can start off. So in a year, let's say you say that in a year, I want to spend 100 grand in total of angel investments.
Right.
So you can say, I'm going to spread it across 10 companies. That is perfectly fine. Because the higher your portfolio, bigger your portfolio, the greater is the potential for a unicorn.
Correct.
Right? So, if you're going to put 100 grand in one company and it goes bust, you've eliminated most of your gunpowder.
Yes.
So I would suggest that the ideal way to do it over a period of time, you can say, if my net worth is X, I'm going to spend 10% of my net worth over a 7-year period or 5-year period or whatever it is, and spread it across a portfolio which includes e-commerce. There's some fintech. There's some 3 or 4 areas that you like. You can choose, figure out whichever sectors you like, but spread it over a period of time. Don't be emotionally involved with these investments. It's not like you got some free capital now, you want to put everything in now, because the only way to make a very strong financially or investor the opportunity set for a big return is only when you create a very large portfolio in angel investments. You can't do it with a portfolio of 5. You can't create with a portfolio of 10. You have to have a significant portfolio, which could be as high as 40 companies or 30 companies. But you start off small, as I said, right? Just because I said 20 to 25 grand is a minimum ticket size is not what you need to follow that. You can start off with 5 grand or 10 grand, and you can provide time in terms of mentoring and such.
And Ramesh, I also know a number of angel investors, and they were relatively risk averse. What they actually ended up starting off with is making tiny investments in equity crowdfunding startups. So essentially, some level of validation had been done. There was, and then they spread it out. It was a small amount of money over several companies, and then they built their portfolios from there.
Absolutely. That's one of the ways to do it. I mean, you can create an angel investment portfolio using AngelList. You can put $1,000 each, spread it over 50 companies, and you can still be an angel investor, right? I mean, and you have a portfolio of 50 companies. I'm sure, I know friends who have done that, and the returns are pretty good, right? You don't have to be swinging in big dollar every time. It's not necessary.
Now, final question before we end this fascinating conversation. Any thoughts you'd like to leave us with and the audience with in terms of angel investing as a whole? Then that includes, for example, experienced angel investors.
I think I would say angel investment is an important part of your asset allocation portfolio for any investor. I'll put it this way: if you got $100 to invest, I would say that you should at least put $10 in angel investments, because it gives a good mix of your asset allocation where the opportunity for massive alpha is there if you want to get involved. B is you should look at angel investment as also an opportunity for you to look at new careers. when I say new careers, let's say, you're currently working in a multinational and you're, running a large team, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're bored of this for 15 years or 20 years and you want to try out something new, you start off with angel investment, you get involved with the startup in terms of mentoring, advising. And at some point of time, you think that you are right there to make the move because you understood how the system works, how the startup works, and you contributed, and you think that you can be part of that ecosystem of the new startup, of a different industry, but with different challenges, right? I mean, it's very easy to be in Unilever, for 25 years, because it doesn't really matter whether you're there or not in Unilever.
Yes, life goes on.
The system chucks, right? It's like a train. It moves on. It doesn't matter who you are. It's like any country. And most of the countries, the prime minister or president, once you institutionalize a system, it chugs along. There is some problems here and there, it chugs along. But in a startup, you are exposed to a totally different set of challenges with limited resources, which I think is a different experience altogether. And a lot of people will appreciate the experience. Whether you choose to have the experience as a way to enhance your skill set, or as an opportunity set for you to think that you're going to hit the home run, or it's a different story. But I would say that the experience of being involved in either, it doesn't matter whether the startup failed or the startup succeeded, it doesn't really matter. But the whole experience brings you a total set of new skill sets, which will be very useful for you over the course of your career.
Ramesh, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show. It's been fascinating. Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Ramesh Raghavan, the chairman of BANSEA, on Biztech's Investor Conversation Show. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe and like our various platforms. Thanks a lot for tuning in.